I think everything is pointing now to a full invasion of Ukraine. Would have thought that actually, I did think a few days ago that they would have limited their activities to the east, perhaps to Kharkiv, to the south, where they've actually are well on their way to establishing that coveted land bridge between the mainland of Russia and Crimea. And now we probably wouldn't be surprised in the least if they kept on going past Odessa all the way up to Moldova, where there's that strip of Russian territory there that they occupy. Our big fear here, I have to be honest with you, in Lviv, it's a hugely symbolic city, the center of Ukrainian patriotism. It's a tourism hub, several cultural artifacts here just behind me, lots of churches and museums and so on. To a twisted mind like Mr. Putin and his circle, this would sadly be a prize for them. I hope I'm wrong, but people are bracing themselves now here too.
What is the strategy in the south, in areas close to those places that you mentioned, Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014?
Yeah, well, Crimea, for the longest time, it's been water starved. So it's been very difficult for them to supply that peninsula. So that land bridge will give them access to the water canal. That's why Kherson in the south was so crucial for this operation, so that they have water coming from the Dnipro River. The other hugely important fact about taking Kherson is that they now have pretty good access to the west side of the Dnipro River. So presumably an attack could be mounted from the south more towards Kyiv. It looks like, everyone is bracing themselves for some kind of onslaught onto Kyiv, the capital. But I think they're going to find quite a big fight on their hands.
And you mentioned Odessa as well. Residents there are fearing the worst.
It's bad. It's really bad. I just got a message from a friend in Odessa. She said that most of her friends have gone to fight. And, she said something interesting, where a lot of Ukrainians are finding this. Their older folks don't want to leave their homes, even in these heavily bombarded areas. And, it's kind of probably a way of thinking among older folks around the world, but especially here, the Slavic kind of mentality is your property is your only thing. And they, of course, their memories go back to Soviet times and, previous wars, and they don't want to leave. So you can imagine the heart-wrenching decisions being made in households across Ukraine. 2 nights ago, I spent the night at this hospitable Ukrainian family here in Lviv. There were 8 of us to start in the evening. By morning, we were down to 7 because the 16-year-old son had left to fight, just left in the middle of the night. You can imagine the reaction from his mother. It's just heart-wrenching all over.
It really is. Michael, tell us a bit more about what it's like where you are at the moment in Lviv compared to the rest of Ukraine. Does it feel relatively safe?
Well, as you know, I've worked in many conflict zones around the world, and I'm actually sick to my stomach because I do have this sense that things could change here. It's been relatively untouched. This part of Ukraine, western part of Ukraine, has been relatively untouched. Hence, we have a lot of people coming in, especially from Kyiv in the east. You can tell by the license plates and so on. All the hotels are booked out, private accommodation, many, many more people on the streets. I'm even hearing different languages spoken. And I think a lot of people are deciding whether to flee to the border. It's not that far from here, actually, or to stay. But the Ukrainians are very quickly, mostly through volunteer organizations, are very quickly trying to ramp up facilities for internally displaced people, because in any kind of complex emergency, you want people to stay in their homeland as long as they're safe, where they are close to family, they're familiar with the land, rather than go to another country. One more quick thing, I have to salute my own government, the Canadian government, and hopefully Australia will follow. But just yesterday, Prime Minister Trudeau announced a very generous temporary resettlement program for those fleeing Ukraine with no cap, no limit. And of course, once they arrive in Canada, US, in Australia, you have a big diaspora community there. Doors will be open. They don't have to worry about a thing. So that is a big, big relief, because the numbers now are projected to be not 5 million, but up to 10 million asylum seekers. It's going to be a big responsibility the world has to take upon itself.
Indeed, those numbers just keep growing as well. Meanwhile, Joe Biden says sanctions have had a profound impact already. Would you agree with this assessment?
I was just asked that a few moments ago. I'm of two minds about this. One is, as we've discussed before, there's that tightening embrace between Russia and China, between Mr. Putin and Xi Jinping. So I have a gut feeling that they've arranged something to help cushion Russia from these punishing sanctions. Having said that, I don't think any of us would wish to be a Russian oligarch right now, because it's getting to the point where if you want to go on vacation, you'll have to go to North Korea or to the artificial islands illegally created by China in the South China Sea. You're not going to be able to take your yacht or a private jet. They are going to learn what the word pariah and isolation mean very quickly. But these sanctions should have been triggered quite some time ago, as President Zelensky was begging for. To do them now is good, but if they had been applied earlier, maybe we wouldn't be in the dire position we are right now.
Just finally, Michael, how difficult is it to verify the number of casualties that are being reported?
Again, in any conflict or natural disaster, I know from experience, it's very, very difficult. The one thing I'm worried about is, even before the hostilities began, Ukraine had a very creaky public health care system. Also, they were pummeled by COVID-19, which, by the way, is still circulating here in very, very big numbers. So a lot of facilities are being targeted. The biggest children's hospital in Kyiv has had to move children to a basement area to treat them. So there's a humanitarian disaster of immense proportions in the works here. And I know from being on the World Health Organization call the other day is that there's stocks of oxygen and things like that in Kyiv, but they can't seem to be able to move it out to where it's needed the most. So huge, huge logistics problems here that people are trying to solve.
Michael Bosecue, as always, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.